What's going on, everybody? This is Cody, the home theater hobbyist, and today I have a comparison that I've been wanting to do for quite some time. And honestly, I didn't think this was going to happen, but it has happened. About a year and a half, 2 years ago, Q Acoustics released their first pair of powered or active bookshelf speakers, these right here, the Q Active 200s. And one of the questions I had was, I wonder how they compare to something like the KEF LS50 wireless, because the LS50 wireless had really kind of made a name for themselves in the community. Well, KEF sent me these, the LS50 wireless 2s, so I have them in for review. I reviewed them, you can definitely check it out. But I have also reviewed these, and I can compare these two and talk about them. What's similar? What's different? How do they sound? What are the differences in the sound? And that's what I want to talk about in this video. So let's just get to it. Okay, first things first, before I get ahead of myself, what are these? Both of these pairs of speakers are powered or active bookshelf speakers, and that means that they have amplification built right into the cabinet of each speaker. So all you have to do is connect them to the wall for power, and then connect them to your favorite source devices, including your television, your CD player, your game console, whether it be PlayStation or Xbox, your turntable, and you can also connect them to your phone via a streaming app you can put on your phone, and you can watch television, watch movies with them. You can listen to your favorite music, you can game on them. Basically, you can have a lot of fun, and they both play high resolution files. But one of the party tricks that both of these have, whether it be the LS50 wireless or the Q Active 200s, is they have a wireless bridge between the speakers. You can connect them wired, so you have a really nice sound between the two of them, but you can also go wireless and it sounds good as well. And that's one of the beautiful things about these, is once you plug them into power into the wall and make those connections, you can begin listening to all your favorite content in high res. Now that brings me to one of the major differences between the two speaker brands, and that is overall approach to design and connections. KEF has created a primary speaker, and this is the main speaker you're going to interact with. There's a touch screen on the top that has all the connections. You power them on, you power them off, all that on the top, and all the connections are made at the rear of the speaker. So there's an HDMI port back there, there's a coax port, a optical port, a sub out. All of that is on the back of the primary speaker. The secondary speaker does have a sub out connection, so you can do a 2-sub setup with these speakers, and that's really cool, but that's all that's on the back of the secondary speaker. The primary speaker is where everything is kind of handled. There's also a remote that comes with the LS50 wireless 2, and it allows you to do things like play, pause, change the volume, everything like that, and it is infrared, so you have to point it at the primary speaker. But what Q Acoustics has done is they've basically made each speaker the same, more or less. All of the inputs and everything is on each one of the speakers. There's no primary speaker or secondary speaker, because all the connections are made with a hub. They've created a separate box that has all the connections that you need on the back. So you plug in everything here, you put this in your entertainment center rather, and you plug everything in here, and then it sends the signal to both of the speakers. And the speakers need to be within, I don't know, about 30 feet or so to receive the signal and play your high-res content. So it is a different philosophy. Now, Q Acoustics does include a remote, and it is an RF or radio frequency remote. So you don't have to have it pointed at anything in the room. All you need to do is select play, pause, volume up and down, or a source, and it will play. So it is a different philosophy. With this, you have a primary and secondary speaker. With this, the speakers are basically identical, and you have this hub that you use to control everything. So you can kind of hide your wires away, in a box, in a cabinet somewhere, and listen to your sound. Whereas with this, you're going to have to kind of plug wires in and use it that way. Now, those differing design philosophies manifest themselves in setup as well. And I have to say that I think the LS50 Wireless 2 setup is easier than the Q Active 200 setup, because when you pull the LS50 Wireless 2s out of the box, you see the connections on the back. That instantly tells you, hey, I need to connect something to HDMI or optical or whatever. And another thing that KEF does is they go ahead from the factory and they wirelessly pair the two speakers together. So you don't have to worry about that. You just connect everything, set them up on the stands, and then you can download the KEF Connect app. You'll pair the speakers to the app, and then you can just sign into your streaming services and start listening to music. It's actually pretty straightforward and easy. Now, this process with the Q Active 200s is straightforward, but it does take a little bit more work, because when you pull these out of the box, you don't see the connections. You have to get the hub out, and then you see the connections, and you start plugging the hub in. Then you turn the hub on, you turn the speakers on, and it takes a few minutes for them to pair between one another. They do pair, but it does take a minute. And while that's happening, you have to download like the Google Home app, because I have the Google Home version of the hub. There's also an Amazon Alexa version. Well, with the Google Home version, you have to download the Google Home app, and that's how you connect the hub to your Wi-Fi network. It's through the Google Home app, and then you can begin playing music and stuff like that once everything is set up. But Q Acoustics does have the Q Active app that you can download, and again, control the hub and your speakers with that app. And that's cool as well. But again, there's 2 apps versus 1, and there's just a few more steps with the Q Active 200s compared to the LS50s. And that's why I think this is a bit easier to set up. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of stuff, but we have not talked about looks, design, that sort of thing. So let's talk about that here and now. First of all, both of these speakers, they have different color options. The Q Active 200s has 2 color options, a black and a white, whereas the LS50s have 4 color options. They have a black, they have a white, there's a titanium gray, which I have right here, and there is also a red version, and it is a glossy red. So if you really want some color, you gotta go LS50. These also come with speaker stands that are sold separately. The LS50s are actually color matched to the speaker, so you can buy the ones that match the speakers that you purchase, which is really cool. The Q Active 200s have the Q Acoustics tensegrity stands, which are kind of stainless steel rods that are just there. They look really nice, and it's a nice classy look, but you can purchase those separately. Now, on the front face, you can see these have different drivers. The LS50s have the UniQ driver array with a tweeter in the center and the woofer around it. I think it looks really good, especially the colors that you have here between this copper salmon color and this body here. I think it looks really cool. With the Q Active 200s, the front face has actually got the drivers offset from center, and they use these balance mode radiator type drivers up front with the Q logo under it. Now, when I first saw the pictures, I was like, I don't know how that's gonna look, but seeing them in person, they actually look better, and it actually doesn't bother me that it's offset a little bit. And Q Acoustics has done this as a design decision for sound quality. These balance mode radiators have a wider dispersion sound field. Now, the bass driver for the Q Active 200s is actually back here in the back, and it comes out of the sides of the back that you can see right there. And it is time aligned with the drivers up front, so there isn't any difference in the alignment of the sound. But overall, I do think that the LS50 Wireless 2 does look a bit better than the Q Active 200s. I mean, you've got the contrast with the driver and then the surround and the surface finish. It looks good, and you can get it in more color. So it's going to fit more different decors and things like that, and more personalities, right? So overall, from a look standpoint, I have to give it to the LS50 Wireless 2. All right, now let's move on and talk about my experience. And the good news is both of these are a really good experience. Whether you're listening to music, watching movies, or whatever it is you're doing, these sound good. And yes, they do sound better than your traditional or average television speakers. I mean, there is no contest. First of all, you have a wider soundstage because the TV or the speakers are farther outside of your television, but there's also more depth, more clarity. It's just a better overall experience. Another thing I'll say about these two speakers is they're both wireless in that there's no speaker wire in between the two speakers, but the KEFs do have the advantage of you can run a Cat 6 cable between the primary and secondary speaker and get an even more high fidelity experience. I think it goes up to like 192 kilohertz at 24 bits when you wire it, but you cannot do that with the Q Active 200s. So for my testing, I ran these two wireless and just tried it out to see how it would work. Now, as far as that wireless connectivity is concerned between the speakers, it actually works really well. The KEF was rock solid, no issues whatsoever during my testing period, whether it was for the full review for these or just testing them back and forth here. It was rock solid. As far as the Q Active 200s are concerned, it wasn't as rock solid as the LS50s, but it was still really good. The main thing I noticed was that every now and then when starting a song, there'd be a distortion for maybe the first second or so of the song, and then it would kind of catch up, sort of like it was buffering. But otherwise, it was really, really good and really rock solid. One other thing I should mention though was during my initial or my full review of these speakers, I did have one time where one of the speakers dropped out when I was watching a movie. I just plugged it back in, it resynced up. So for whatever reason that happened, and I just wanted to, kind of say that here just so it's on the record. But otherwise, like I said, the wireless connection between these speakers and the hub for the Q Active 200s is really good, really, really good. And that brings me on to sound quality. But before I talk about sound quality, I'm going to play a couple of audio samples so that you can hear how these speakers sound relative to one another. Hopefully you enjoyed those audio samples. Now let's talk about that sound quality. First of all, first thing I'll mention, one of the things that Q Acoustics did with this design is they used the balance mode radiators to give a nice wide dispersion pattern, so you get a nice wide sweet spot. And that's one of the first things I noticed about these speakers. You can kind of set them up. They're really forgiving, I guess I should say, when you set them up. You don't have to set them up perfectly to get a good soundstage. These you have to play with just a little bit more to get a good soundstage. They're pretty wide, but the Q Active 200s are a bit wider. Now, I would recommend playing with these, not only toning them in and out, but also messing around with the distance from a wall or a corner, just to get the response that you're kind of looking for in the speakers. Now, personally, I like these a little bit away from the wall and toned in, but again, that's my personal preference, and I think you should just kind of mess around with them when you actually purchase them. Now, as far as the high end is concerned, between these two speakers, they both do a good job. They play high frequencies, that treble, with clean and clear. But I did notice that the Q Actives does play that high end with just a bit more detail than the LS50 wireless. I like both of them, but the Q Active 200 does a little bit more detail. But again, they're both nice, clean, and clear. Moving into the mid-range, moving into the vocals, they both do a good job, but I have to say that the LS50 wireless does a better job. There's a richness, there's a fullness there, and honestly, that applies to vocals as well. And I'll say that the Q Active 200s is a little bit more natural, I would say, of a voice than these, but that warmth, that richness really does add to the presentation of music, of movies, when you're listening to the LS50s. It also adds a bit of depth to the image, especially compared to the Q Active 200s. The Q Active 200s have depth, but the LS50 wireless has more depth. And that additional depth really manifests itself in live concerts, because you'll have a lead singer's voice that's a bit more forward as compared to the band or something like that, especially with the LS50 wireless. It works with the Q Actives, but is much more prominent with the LS50 wireless. Now moving into the bass regime, I have to say that both of them play good, decent bass, especially with music, but the Q Actives have a little bit more detail and a little bit more depth to the image. You can just hear a little bit more, especially when listening to music on the Q Active 200s. Now, when watching movies, both of them do a good job, but I prefer a subwoofer. At least a small 8-inch subwoofer works better than these work when listening to action adventure movies with a lot of explosions and stuff like that, because you're going to be able to feel the bass a little bit more compared to these. But that also brings up a difference between these two speakers. The LS50 Wireless 2 has 2 subwoofer connections, one on each one of the speakers. So you can connect whatever sub you have to whatever speaker is the closest with the LS50s. But if you have 2 subwoofers, you can plug them both in, and that's really cool. Now, the Q Active 200s has 1 subwoofer out connection on the hub. So you can place that hub as close as you want to the subwoofer, and that's really cool because, you know, it can be close to the subwoofer and not necessarily close to the speakers, but it's only 1 connection. Now you can use a Y splitter and again get dual subs, but that is one of the differences between these two. But overall, I think these two speakers do a great job with the sound quality. Everything sounds nice, clean, clear, crisp, and it plays high-res music. But I do like the high end and bass from the Q Active 200s just a little bit more. The fact that the woofer is in the back of the speaker, like I said, is time aligned, so I didn't notice any difference in the timing of the Q Active 200s. It plays very, very well regardless of what you're playing. But the LS50 wireless does have more depth, especially in that mid-range, and it sounds really, really good with live concerts. So overall, honestly, I think I would recommend the Q Active 200s just a little bit more from a sound quality standpoint, just because it does a little bit better at the high end and in that bass regime. But the LS50 wireless 2s sound really, really good too. So overall, I've enjoyed my time with these speakers, and unfortunately I'm gonna have to send them back, but I've enjoyed my time with them. And from a recommendation standpoint, overall, I have to recommend the LS50 Wireless 2s for most people because they offer more color options, so you can fit your personal taste and your decor a little bit easier with the LS50 Wireless 2s. The KEF Connect app works really well, setup is really easy, and these sound good. The wireless connection between the two is rock solid. But the one downside is you will have cables going between your primary speaker and your equipment. And that's one thing that you don't have to worry about with the Q Active 200s. You just put this little box inside your equipment rack, and these just kind of sit out there, and the only cable you see is, and you might not even see that depending on how you route it, is the power cable coming from the speaker. So that's a good thing. I really like the sound from these. A little bit clearer at the top end, a little bit more detail in the bass regime compared to these, but both speakers sound really, really good. So I don't think that you're going to have an issue with either one, whichever one you pick. Let me know which one you pick and how you like it in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, definitely give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, and share the videos. I would greatly appreciate it. I'll talk to you next time.